Tariffs are the left's new boogeyman. Democrats are incessantly screaming that Trump's duties on Canada, Mexico, and China will ruin the economy. But that's not what we're seeing play out. The Spark Notes version, these countries need us more than we need them.
This is something that we have to do. There'll always be a little short-term interruption. I don't think it's going to be big, but the countries and companies that have been ripping us aren't particularly happy with what I'm doing. But the United States will be very happy.
President Trump today agreed to pause some of the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for 1 month. That will be applied to goods compliant with the USMCA, cars making up a large chunk of that.
Canada and Mexico have until April 2nd, the day that reciprocal tariffs take effect, for our neighbors to get it together on the fentanyl crisis. And as Democrats whine about Trump's game plan, they fail to recognize how this negotiation tactic puts these countries on a deadline to comply with us.
President 47 vowing to change the massive trade deficit. Compliments of sleepy Joe Biden. Today, we got the last read on trade under that old man for more than $131 billion in January. His final month in office, up more than $33 billion from December, the largest monthly increase ever since they've been keeping statistics.
Even Sean Fain's United Auto Workers Union is on Team Trump tariffs, writing this in a statement, quote, "We are glad to see an American president take aggressive action on ending the free trade disaster that has dropped like a bomb on the working class."
But the Democrats won't bring that up when they complain. They also won't talk about the China factor, how Trump is using America's economic power to get other countries to take action against the communist country.
Walmart is now even knocking on China's door, asking it to absorb the cost of tariffs so customers don't have to.
This afternoon, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent summed up China's stake in the game.
So China is exporting their policies to us. They decimated our manufacturing sector. There's a new paper out called the China Shock. And it said the community has recovered, the workers haven't. And so clearly the policy is not working for working Americans. So China, they exported their policies, and tariffs are one way to push back on this. It's like California versus Texas.
Here now to react, I'm pleased to say, is Breitbart economics and finance editor John Carney. John, so good to have you on the program this evening because we want to get your thoughts about this, more on what our Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was kind of explaining there. You've written about this very issue very recently, that essentially tariffs are needed as a policy because other countries are kind of not playing by the same rules.
Right now, our country's economic policy is made in Beijing. What Donald Trump is saying is, let's make it here in America. Let's stop importing China's economic policy. They depend, and not just China, by the way, a lot of EU countries, a lot of countries around the world depend on the U.S. as the first consumer and the last consumer. We buy all of their excess production. They intentionally hold down consumption in their countries because they know they can sell it to us. You cannot go on forever overproducing what your own citizens consume. That creates this trade imbalance, and we're putting an end to it.
John, you were in the room when the Treasury Secretary made these comments and had a chance to chat with him afterwards. What did he tell you?
So one of the great things that he said is like that the Trump administration is not backing off here. That the market can go down. They're not scared of the market going down. There's a lot of talk that the stock market is the real boss of Donald Trump. And Scott Bessent pushed back very hard on this. He said, we have a long-term vision for reshaping the American economy to help the American people, to make it made in America. If the stock market goes down a bit, that's okay. He also said, what people say, oh no, it's going to raise prices. He said the American dream is not built just on the access to cheap goods. It is built on the dream of prosperity for everyone. That's a lot more important, even if, as Trump said, it caused some disruption.
He also talked about some of the other issues with spending. He kind of expanded on the idea that we don't have a revenue problem in this country. We have a spending problem. We have a soundbite on this. Let's play it and get your reaction on the other side.
The U.S. does not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. We are right where we have been in the long-term averages, 17.5%, 18.5% of revenues. That hasn't changed. What has changed is this blowout spending.
And we saw that spending really dramatically tick up under the Biden administration. And so we're just at this pace where it's not sustainable. And that's what they're trying to stop now.
Right. We got a deficit that went up to 6.7% of GDP during a time of relative peace where the country is not at war. There are places around the world that are at war, but not our country. This is ridiculous. We weren't in a recession. Joe Biden's reckless fiscal policy really was doing the country. That's actually what brought Scott Bessent into politics. This guy was not into politics. He was making a fortune in the private sector. He came into politics because he thought if we get another 4 years of that kind of recklessness, we're doomed. We'll never be able to undo it. Through growing, we can bring the deficit down to 3% of GDP, and that's sustainable. We can grow our way out of this problem now if we do it now. If we let it go on for much longer, we are doomed. So when the Democrats are screaming about every single cut that comes their way, they are basically saying, okay, we embrace American decline. Donald Trump, Scott Bessent reject it.
Yeah, no, it's a winning economic message. And the president, I think, in combination with Doge is doing is showing all the waste, fraud, and abuse. We're not focused on the core. We're focused on supporting all this waste, fraud, and abuse. But I want to talk, last topic here for you, John, about the expenses for defense. Mm-hmm. The president is really pushing, and the European Union is starting to step up. They're responding what Donald Trump's taking. It's something like defense spending, agreeing to $800 billion in euros in more defense spending, which is what the president's goal was, to have them pay their fair share.
This is actually rebalancing the world economy. One of the ways these countries have been able to warp the world economy is they spend on social spending but do not spend for their own security. Donald Trump is saying that's over. You are going to contribute to global security. You're not going to be a free rider on this anymore. As Scott Bessent said today, there is no difference between national security and economic security. We are pursuing both at the same time by requiring Europe to make their fair contribution. And even if they have to do it angrily, I mean, they're saying, we're doing this because Donald Trump's a bad man. That's okay. I'm cool if they have to do it out of spite, as long as they do the right thing.
Yeah. And can we talk a little bit more about the short-term paying? Because I think we've heard the administration acknowledge that some of what could be some price increases that we see, some rockiness, some bumpiness in the markets that they expect is going to settle out. Because I think we've heard some comments about what could make that kind of calm down in the not-too-distant future. Scott Bessent has talked about energy production.
Right.
Deregulation and delivering on the tax cuts. Do you think that's going to be enough? If Americans get those policies in place, is that going to, kind of alleviate concerns, make Americans feel more confident about this trajectory, this direction that we're going in?
So yes, I think the tax cuts and the deregulation will help a lot. I also think we're going to see that the price increases are going to be a lot less than the fearmongers say. We raised tariffs before in the first Trump administration. There was almost no inflation. Biden didn't raise tariffs very much, so he had a few, but he had the worst tariff ever. The notion that tariffs cause inflation is wrong. They do not cause inflation. The Atlanta Fed just did a study on this, and what they found is that if companies passed on 50% of all the tariffs to their customers, which, by the way, they will not do. Walmart said today they're trying to get lower prices out of China. But if they passed on 50% of the tariffs, prices would go up by 0.8%. We had 0.4 in January, so that's just 2 months of inflation. It's not going to be as painful as the Democrats say.
And, Scott Bessent has guessed his hypothesis is that China is going to absorb a lot of these tariffs. So Walmart is not wrong for asking them to
China is definitely going to, because they depend on selling things to the U.S. They do not want to give that up, so they will absorb a lot of the tariffs.
John Carney, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Good to see you.